Arts Centre Melbourne presents the Kiln 2019, the Art of Pride Deaf and Disabled Networking event presented in partnership with Arts Access Victoria. In this captioned video, a succession of speakers and presenters address ideas of disability pride at the Channel at Arts Centre Melbourne. On a low stage, 3 red cushions rest atop a long black bench seat. Behind, a projector shows images and videos. As the event commences, the projector screen shows a diverse group of disabled people in front of a tan brick wall slathered with paste-up images. To the left is a banner for Arts Access Victoria. To the right is a position for an Auslan interpreter and a screen showing captions, with a banner for the Kiln series behind. The interpreter is also inset into the picture again at bottom right. The event MC Eva Sifis stands at left holding a microphone.
I will start tonight's proceedings with a welcome to country. Here at the Arts Centre Melbourne, we stand on contested land and acknowledge the traditional owners, the people of the Kulin nations, and pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and also to any elders that may be here today. Okay, so with a running order of tonight, we're first going to hear from our Arts Centre representative, Tim Stitz, followed by CEO of Arts Access Victoria, Carolyn Bowditch. Then we will hear about the amazing Disability Pride Wall from Larissa McFarlane, after which we'll hear from last year's winner of the Stella Young Award, Madeleine Little, and all the exciting things that she's been up to this past year. And then, excitingly, we're all going to meet the new winner of the Stella Young Award. Yay! So, just orientation around here. If you want to head to the quiet room, just go out through these front doors, past the yellow glasses and into the yellow room that is marked quite obviously quiet room. And then the toilets are through these doors just here, right to the end, past the kitchen, and then there are toilets just there for you. I'd like to point out the Arts Access Victoria staff. If you could all just raise your hands or stand up. Everybody acknowledge them. Good on you. There they are. And then we will thank Amanda Laurie-Jones from the board of Arts Access Victoria over there with her onwards. Okay, and I'd like to thank everyone for coming here, and I'd also like to thank the remote guests that are joining us over the iPads, and also the guests that have come from interstate. Thank you so much for coming along. Yes, so I would like you all just to take the next couple of minutes to turn to the person next to you, especially if you don't know them, and introduce yourself. Let's make this a convivial event. I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who is Tim Stitz from the Arts Centre Melbourne. He is a creative producer here. He's a theatre and contemporary performance, the creative producer of theatre and contemporary performance in the Arts Centre Melbourne, and he's an artist in his own right. His view that art plays a fundamental role within the cultural thread of this country is one reflected by Arts Access Victoria, and he is now here to speak, and we are very excited to be collaborating with this institution at this time. Here you go, Tim. Yes, you can. Go for it.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. And yep, I'm Tim, and I'm one half of creative producer for theatre and contemporary performance here, covering Daniel Clark's position. I know some of you know Daniel. There's 2 of us that are doing his position 3 days a week, part-time at the moment. I know there's a wall, there's no one behind the... Oh, maybe. If you need to move, please move. And hello to everybody who's accessing this session remotely. I just wanted to start by saying that I was born on the lands of the Terramerigal clan up in the northern suburbs of Sydney. And that is Gurungai lands. But I feel very privileged that I've spent most of my life in Naarm in Melbourne on the lands of the Kulin Nation. And on behalf of Arts Centre Melbourne, I welcome you all and acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and their elders past, present and future. I also want to acknowledge the disability and arts elders that are here in this room that have paved the way for us here, for all the work you do now, but also that you've done previously. It's so great to be here with Arts Access's CEO, Caroline, and your staff and board members, and welcome to the channel. This event is part of the Kiln, which is a month-long series of events looking, and we've really privileged access, inclusion and representation, and there's been workshops, panels, creative developments, and nights like this, which are about networking and artists being able to connect and talk to one another and meet. I just wanted to spend a brief moment talking about some of the things that we're doing here at Arts Centre Melbourne. You're all welcome here as artists, as presenters of work, as arts workers, as well as audiences. It's the mandate of Arts Centre Melbourne, and it's written into law, the Victorian Arts Centre Act, that we continue to quest to make inclusion and access the bedrock of our mission here. It's also a really great privilege to be hosting this event, but also where the Stella Young Award's being announced. It feels pretty special. I myself didn't know Stella, but I know a number of people who did, and she holds a very special place in their heart. And I'm sure a number of people in this room knowing her too. She was so much loved and an amazing advocate and voice for arts and disability in this country. And she was also a formidable artist and arts lover herself. So Arts Centre Melbourne's journey with access started many years ago with a focus on venue access and audience access, with services such as audio description, Auslan interpreting, touch tours and captioning. And a dedicated access and community inclusion focus within programming has catapulted access into a new realm at Arts Centre Melbourne, with an emphasis on programming and embedding access within everyone's creative remit. And I just want to acknowledge Wendy and Cassandra, who are here from our team, because really much of this work and how we embed is down to them here in this place. So thank you very much. 4 years ago, we presented with Australia's first relaxed performance, and that's Alice at the Opera. We did so together with our long-term partners, Arts Access Victoria. And at the time, it felt risky. And now it's just business as usual. And there's a lens of inclusion that we apply across our programming more generally, and that's across the board. We've gone from having 2 relaxed performances annually to over 18. And we present a program and support up to 15 Australian and international companies annually. So such are the ripple effects with working like an organisation such as Arts Access Victoria. There are many other such examples, especially as we continue to journey with a focus on programming, telling stories informed by lived experience of disability, presenting artists with a disability, supporting teaching artists with inclusive practice, supporting work that is led by artists with a disability. They are passions of ours and we feel are vitally important. Arts Access Victoria's Adapt Leadership Program and Open Your Eyes training have ignited conversations about access and inclusion across this place. I also want to acknowledge that we don't always get it right, but we learn and we have a whole organisational passion to include all Victorians with and without disability. Our ambition and what our programming team are working towards, I know some of you in this room may know bits and strands of this, we're working towards a week-long takeover in 2021 that presents contemporary performance and visual art by leading international and Australian artists with disabilities. And it tells stories informed by the lived experience of disability in a festival focused on artists, creatives, thinkers and provocateurs from Australia, Aotearoa, New Zealand, and the Asia Pacific. And as part of that, we'll also bring First Nations artists together to celebrate and foster artistic exchange. And we hope to present the program in partnership with a number of other partners. As I alluded to at the start, tonight's event is part of our biannual Kiln program. It's a festival of workshops, creative developments, opportunities for those in Melbourne's amazing small to medium and independent arts sector. to hone practice, really. That's the central focus. The very first Kiln program started in 2017. It's biennial, and it featured a series of stencils by Larissa McFarlane, producer of the Disability Pride Mural, that is being screened tonight. And that feels like a really lovely connection to have as we wrap up the 2019 edition. This year's event has also featured the Eco Collective, who were also involved in the 2017 edition, and it was wonderful to have them back again. Nexus with their public podcast series, as well as Jodie Mundy's curation of a series of fantastic and really in-demand panels, actually, I have to say. I particularly loved the Future of Inclusive Leadership panel, which Caroline was part of, and also the State of the Deaf Arts, which happened last week, to have 6 deaf artists and hear about their practice was just hugely illuminating and quite special. Tonight's event is the Art of Pride. That's what we're here. And I've been asked to reflect on what I'm proud of. And right now, as we close the Kiln, I'm quite new to Arts Centre Melbourne in this position. I do feel really proud to be involved with a program that has placed access and inclusion and representation as its focus, as its sort of focal points. I'm proud of the team that has delivered it, particularly Natasha, who's sitting right in the middle here, who has delivered all our events. It's really put these issues sort of at the heart of our discussions. And what struck me is how intersectional all those discussions are. And like I feel like, well, but that I think for a big place like Arts Centre Melbourne, where cultural change takes time, and I know that some of you are probably feeling like it's time enough and it needs to hurry the hell up. That is very deep work, and for those who are listening, change is happening slowly but surely. I want to please encourage you to connect tonight, enjoy the conversations, the celebrations that are bound to come from the award being announced, and thank you all for coming and being part of the event. Cheers.
Thank you very much, Tim. Now, introducing our next presenter. Carolyn Bowditch is a performer, maker, teacher and speaker. In her now famous self-description, a mosquito buzzing effectively in the ears of the art industry across the world. After having led residences around Europe and Australia, she is also a renowned consultant. Recently, Caroline took up the position of CEO at Arts Access Victoria, at last making the organisation to be disability-led. Please welcome Carolyn Bowditch.
Hi. Hi. Is it all right if I'm here? Sure. Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Caroline, and I have almost been in this role as CEO for a year now. And it's been a year of learning and listening and observing and meeting amazing people and really getting a sense of the landscape that is in Australia, which is so very different to the landscape that I've been living in for the last 16 years in the UK. When I was thinking about tonight, I was trying to identify when I really remembered finding my pride as a disabled person. And I actually think that it was generated by somebody in this room. It was a moment when I was 26 and I was invited by Arts Access Victoria to be part of a project that was called Movable Dance. And it was a 12-week course in contact improvisation, which is not the wisest thing when you live with fragile bones, to think about full body contact whilst moving with someone with your clothes on. But I did it anyway, and it was in that process that was incredibly led by Janice Florence, who is in the room. that I, for the first time, really felt like I'd landed in my skin, and that I started to discover what I'd perceived as being a strange and awkward body was actually capable of. It was the time when I discovered what it could do, what its joys were, what it actually had to offer the world, which at that time wasn't necessarily the water that I was swimming in. I was swimming, as many of us still do, in a space that tells us that we're not welcome, that we might be too hard, that this is not the thing to be proud of. But somehow, in finding my skin and landing in it, through the process of art and dance, I found my pride. And that was really the beginning of my journey, I suppose. My ambition now is that that can start much earlier for young people, young disabled people, to find their pride, to really be encouraged to be proud of who they are, to not shy away from having a disability, being disabled, being deaf, all of those things. Like, be really proud of that as part of our identity, because I think we're all intersectional beings. We are not one thing. I am a woman. I am disabled. I am gay. I am Australian. I'm all of those things. And I think often we get divided and we get split up into, which identity am I being today? I'm all of those things. And disability is integral to my identity and who I am. And it shapes the world that I live in and how I move through it. Stella, as lots of you would know, was a very dear friend of mine. She was a bit like my baby sister. And from the time that she was about 15, she would come to Melbourne from Stall on a bus. Her parents would put her on a bus in Stall, send her to Melbourne, and I'd pick her up the other end and take her out and show her how to live a life. I'm incredibly proud of the role that I had in Stella's life, and for the tiny, tiny bit that I might have had in shaping her into the incredible woman that she grew into. We miss her daily, and but she stays with us. And I'm really excited later about talking more about the Stella Young Award, because her legacy lives on, and it's really exciting to see it emerging in other artists. So enjoy this evening. It's a joy to be here with you all, and thanks for coming. And it's lovely to see lots of new faces that we haven't seen before, and the old ones, of course. Thanks very much.
I want to ask you a question to the audience.
Oh, my question to the audience is, when did you get proud? Where did it come from? Who helped you find it? That's my question. That's kind of three.
Where did you find your pride? Okay, everyone. I'd just like to ask, is there anybody who would like to volunteer their moment of their claiming of pride?
My moment of pride was very straightforward, and it is on display right now. It's up there above Eva's head on the photo. That's my mucked up brain, and that's using nice words, with its little holes where the red dots are and the way it doesn't actually connect. And so I thank Larissa very much for giving me my pride.
And I do have to say, I think I'm sorry to say that, but this is the most conducive introduction to Larissa. So I'm just going to go ahead now and read my little intro to Larissa. So Larissa McFarlane is an artist and disability activist based in Melbourne's West, where she practices printmaking, artist books, and street art, bringing it to others with her community art practice. In this, her activism rings loud and proud, and her coming tale of the Disability Pride War will reveal more. A question for you. I'd love to hear your response now as Larissa makes her way up onto the stage. What does disability pride mean to you? And you have roughly 20 seconds. Does anybody want to volunteer? What does disability pride mean to you? Oh, come on. Somebody.
A little bit shy.
What? Okay. Disability pride means to me an ownership of myself. I spent many, many years, of course, because I acquired my disability, being something that I wanted to shun. And so disability pride means to me a reality in which I am ready to express and ready to stand in. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to our beautiful, verbose, lovely lady, Larissa, to stun you all with her presentation.
Thanks. That has to be the best introduction I've ever had. Good evening. I'd like to acknowledge that we meet this evening on the stolen lands of the Kulin Nation and that sovereignty has never been ceded. And I pay my respects to elders and also to any First Nations people in the room today and any who are around Australia watching us online. I'm not quite sure where to wave to, but hello to everybody out there. I also want to acknowledge all the disability activists and self-advocates who've come before us and have really, because they've paved the way for us to be here today, and they've certainly paved the way for me to be here. And I also want to acknowledge all the disability leaders who are in the room today. It's just so awesome. So, as Eva said, I'm Larissa McFarlane, and for purposes of access for everyone, I'm a white 50-year-old woman wearing colourful, faintly ridiculous clothes with a hat, sunglasses, dreadlocks and a decorated flipstick walking stick. I did indeed lead the process to make what turns out to be Australia's first Disability Pride mural. And the photo that's here on the screen was taken at the end of the making of the mural and is some of the many artists who are involved on that day. This mural was years in the making. I'm the proud owner of a 20-year-old brain injury, and along with that came a mental illness diagnosis and a chronic pain syndrome. But thanks to my brain injury, I'm also an artist. I literally came to be an artist after my brain injury, having had no interest in the visual arts before. My favourite medium is printmaking, and I started doing street art a few years ago, specifically because I wanted to explore my own disability identity. And I also became, I'm also a community artist, and I realise now that I've been doing that for a number of years with members of my disabled community. I just didn't know that's what it was called. So I've been trying to do this Disability Pride mural project for several years. But as with all art projects, I needed time to develop my art skills and to develop my networks in the disability community, develop the idea, but most importantly, to develop the confidence to be able to publicly stand up and identify with disability pride. Because it is not easy to stand up and say that you are a proud disabled woman, but it should be easier. It should be a lot easier, and I want it to be a lot easier. Hence why I persisted. So what is disability pride? I know that you all have an idea. But it's really very different for each of us. And it's so complicated, but it's also really simple. Disability pride is about trying to change the way people think about disability. And it's promoting the idea that disability is actually a natural and beautiful part of the human diversity. And so that as people with disability, we can take pride in our experiences and our lives and our bodies. So I asked a friend recently what disability pride meant to her, and she said, it's lifting the lid on shame, which is so true. It's lifting the lid on shame. Disability pride is about challenging the stigma and the shame that so many of us experience when we identify with disability. This is called internalized ableism, and pretty much all disabled people have this to some extent. So this is when people, disabled people, in fact all people, take on the negative attitudes that society has about disabled people, that sees people with disability as lesser and not worthy, and the things that Caroline mentioned. And because we've internalised these attitudes, we then see ourselves negatively. And it can be really hard to shift these deep-seated beliefs. So for me, that's what disability pride is about, trying to change my own attitude towards myself and sharing this with others so that we can all grow stronger. Because I believe that when my community is strong and my friends are strong, I will be stronger. So I only really started thinking about the value of disability pride a few years ago, which is also when I discovered that it's a real thing in the US. Way back in 1990 was the first Disability Pride Parade. And then there were a few more after that. Details are a bit sketchy. Our history hasn't been documented well. But then in 2004, things really kicked off, mostly in Chicago, and there's been annual Disability Pride Parades ever since. And I was like, I want to go to one. I want to go to one here in Melbourne. But Australia doesn't have yet the same disability pride history. Although, since I have started work on this mural behind, Adelaide has now had 2 disability pride parades organised by the awesome Kelly Vincent. And there's also been other disability pride events, mostly here in Melbourne, I think. So back to the mural. I knew I couldn't organise a parade. I wanted to, but I did think it was possible that I might have the skills now to do a mural and maybe enough willing friends to help me do it. I just really wanted to create a space in public where we could gather under our own control without disability services directing us and be proud of our lives and create an artwork that we defined with images that we defined for ourselves. This mural was never going to be something I could do myself because the point was to create a space for all of us. And you can't create collective spaces if you don't involve people from the start. I just feel like I should say at this point, nothing about us without us. So 2017, the idea of this collective disability pride mural popped into my head yet again, and this time it coincided with a burst of clarity and energy. And before it could disappear, I rushed off to meet up with 2 disabled artist friends in Footscray, told them my idea again, and this time I said, will you do it with me? And they said yes, and we were off. So I got in touch with a whole lot of my friends who I thought might be interested. And it was interesting because not that many were, and they weren't the ones I was expecting to be, but enough of them were interested. So then I submitted the project to my local council to be part of their upcoming evening festival. So I started by, I asked friends to send me a photo. I started out as send me a photo of your walking stick because I was obsessively making liner cuts of walking sticks at that time. But then I realised that's a bit limiting. So I broadened it out to your mobility device. But then again, that's a bit limiting. So then it became, send me a photo of something that represents your life or your interests, because disabled people are really diverse. So the visual artists sent me images of their artwork, the writers sent me words, the performers sent me photos of themselves, and then I spent time collaborating with the non-artists to come up with something unique that represented them. And that ranged from a collage of Facebook memes about brain injury, from a friend who was obsessively posting Facebook memes about brain injury, to a collection of photos and words about one person's ongoing campaign to access transport, to a letter from an assistance dog about his job, alongside this huge image of this same dog. And there were also historical photos from the 80s about the fight to close institutions. So all in all, over the next 2 months, about 40 people contributed artwork. And so my process was that I rescaled these images, got them printed out onto large paper, and then we cut out the images, we coloured them in, and we had a mass paste-up party at this evening Footscray Festival. We pasted them up on this huge, great, beautiful wall in Footscray, and then high above these images were spelt out in large letters, using my liner cut walking sticks, the words disability pride. It was awesome. It was exciting. It was adrenaline pumping. It was so hot. It was so much work. There were tears from me, and there was laughter. It was scary for some of us who had never identified as disabled in public before. And it was joyous. And people with different disabilities met for the first time. And it was amazing. And it looked pretty good too. And we were so proud. Sadly, as most of you will now know, the mural was destroyed just over a week later, in the early morning of December 4, just hours after International Day of People with a Disability. It was heartbreaking. And so now is probably a good time to show you the film, because we did in fact recreate the mural. It took a long time. It was really hard. We faced a lot of resistance. And because we didn't get to document the first one we did before it was destroyed, this time when we made it, we took photos. And then we also made this little film, which is directed by the awesome Naomi Chaney. And after we see the film, that's going to be a chance to ask me some questions. So think about that. So Jason, roll the film.
A news clip reads, McFarlane devastated by loss of disability pride artwork. Larissa stands in front of a brick wall holding a mic.
When the wall was removed last year, a week after it was put up on International Day of People with a Disability, it was pretty devastating. It was just removed by council by mistake. It still hurts so much to think about it, because it's just felt like that way that our voices are continually marginalised, and that I've experienced, so many ways in which I've been dismissed, and it just felt like that all over again in such a big public way.
Larissa returns to the bench seat and catches the eye of someone in the front row.
I like you because you keep smiling at me. I'm feeling a bit emotional. It's 18 months now since it actually first came down, and I'm glad to reach this milestone. Have you got any questions?
Is the Pride mural still up, Footscray, where it was?
You're surprised it's still up?
No. Is it still up?
It is still up. And what they're most amazed, so it's 9 months now since we put the second mural up in September last year, and it is still there. And not only is it still there, it still looks good. Paste-ups don't usually last this long. We were extra magic at putting them on. But the most amazing thing is that it has not been tagged. And that, I've been doing street art for a number of years and I am amazed. And I think it's really interesting that the taggers can recognise it as art and yet the people who cleaned it off can't. Yeah. There was actually one person who came and visited the wall in the week after it went up and did add, with a black texter, a lot of words. And my first thought was, oh my God, some defacing's happened. But it was this beautiful addition where somebody had written words about being too sick to work, but not sick enough to get the dole, to get the pension. And it was all this sort of in-between bits about disability. It was a really beautiful addition. I do recommend go and visit the wall and have a look and give yourself an hour because there's a lot there.
Would that be like the tagger's respect for having a disability, like them not tagging on the wall? Like,
yeah, I can't explain it. I can't. It's respect, I think.
Yeah, it's almost like they saw you put it up and they thought, hang on a sec, there's something happening here.
Maybe they did. I mean, the community does, the tagging people do communicate and maybe they all saw us doing it that day and went, we'll leave it alone. I don't know.
Well, I can feeling a little bit of the gap with the non-tagging. When the wall was going up, there was a couple of people that were going through and one of them did make a comment about it, and I'd been talking to the friend that they were with, and the friend actually basically said to the guy kind of about leaving it alone back then.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that. Yeah.
That was part of the story.
Wow. I just mentioned was very involved in the process of putting it up because it did actually take quite a long time to put up. It was over many days. And we got a scissors lift, as you saw in the film, and it was a big job, but it was good. And I can say that some of that detail I have written a bit more about the story, and I've put that on my blog finally after 9 months. It went up yesterday.
I've got a question to the audience. I'm just wondering if anyone who is an artist in the audience uses their art form to express their pride around their experience, and whether you wanted to share that with us at all. Yes? Would you like to introduce yourself as well when you start?
Okay, my name's and I'm currently the secretary for Brain Injury Matters, the town of Larissa and Eva and Warren and Ross here. But anyway, my pride, like, what was the question again, sorry?
Do you express your pride in your artwork in the same way as pride is expressed on the wall?
Probably not so much. Like, I'm a motivational speaker and I speak to people about life choices, and my pride, and I love the fact that I had a brain injury, and like, I don't love how I had my brain injury, but I love the fact that I've got one now, and it's allowed me to become a motivational speaker, speaking to people about smart choices, and there's more post-injury in my love for life at the moment. So I pride myself very much, and I do that in talking, and I do love talking. So I'll give back the microphone.
Hi. I was just going to talk about how I express my art my disability with my art. I guess it's sort of, the last project that I did, it started before that. It started with Kath Duncan's workshop, and I heard for the first time audio description, and it reminded me so much of my experience with schizophrenia and hearing voices and just that kind of echo and the space in between things. So I kind of thought it would be cool to kind of incorporate that into live art, live theatre. And, I guess it comes around to that intersectionality in some sort of bizarre way, is that we are all connected in some way. And that was sort of the theme for my project, Woven. Yeah.
Wow.
But, I really, to acknowledge what you've done, I feel really inspired by you in making it easier for people like myself to come out and feel proud. It's taken a long time for me to be able to do so. And, it hasn't been easy, but it's people like yourself and a few others that make it all the worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I get to go and see the Pride mural often because I live near it, and it's always a great source of comfort for me to go there and see so many of my friends on the wall and see a place that belongs to us and that speaks of disability in such a different way.
Would you be kind enough to take me on a tour one day? That'd be good.
I'd love to.
That'd be great. Let's set it up finally.
And we'll do our own, but if anyone else would like to come on a tour of the Disability Pride Wall, I will do that for you.
Just another point, if I don't mind.
Another question?
What I wanted to say is, growing up for me, I felt a bit of a disconnect within the community. I was trying to figure out how to fit in, I suppose, and I didn't know if I was deaf or where my background kind of intersected. My parents are from Greece and they don't speak English, so that kind of compounds with that intersectionality, and I wondered, how do I fit into this? And the third is my sexuality. So all of those things interplay, and it makes it difficult for me to find my space, to find my way into society. But moving ahead, I felt that I didn't know how to get into that society, and there's no visibility of those deaf people. I couldn't see them. Where were they in the paper? Where were they in the media? So I felt embarrassed and I felt shame. And I thought, why do people ignore deaf people? So I struggled through that, and I started working and I ignored those problems, and I felt like, well, I started to think more about my identity. I felt very lost at the time. So when I finally stopped working, that was really a turning point for me. It made me really realize what my identity was and who I am. At that point, I started writing. And that was, I suppose, a way of helping me discover my identity. And that's been a massive help for me. It's been very cathartic. So I think being involved in a Deaf Writers Festival a few years ago was a big point. That was through an organisation called Deaf Eyes, so I was able to tell my story then, and that was a fantastic experience for me. And we talked about what it was like to be deaf and what it was like to be visible as a deaf person. And I suppose at that point it started to roll from there. And I thought, okay, wow, this is what I'm meant to do. I'm meant to be creative. I'm meant to be a writer. And I, am working on a novel. And well, it was just a massive breakthrough, I suppose. But at the same time, I felt like there was still barriers. There's barriers still for deaf people to try to show our identity. And I think that's because people don't think of deafness as a disability as such. And if people, so I don't feel disabled enough, I suppose, in a way. And I think that's confusing sometimes. Where do I fit? there's nothing wrong with me. I just can't hear. And I do understand why people aren't afraid of deafness. And people feel like they have to fix it. And that affects our culture, and it restricts our culture. For me, as a deaf person, from my perspective, it's very muddled. It's very confusing. I mean, on one hand, I am deaf. Yes, I feel good about that. And I try and show people that it's okay to be deaf. But on the other hand, it's almost like it's a negative. That people want to fix it, people want to be hearing, and from my point of view, I find it very difficult.
I can, you...
Sorry, I'm repeating on a little bit there.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing. You touch on so many things there that are really important. One being, I think, that finding your community is really important to finding your identity, your disability identity, and finding a sense of pride in yourself. And I know for a long time I was proud of who I was within my brain injury community or within my friends with mental illness, but stepping outside that became hard. And the other interesting thing you talk about is the whole whether are you disabled enough, or are you really disabled or not? And that became very apparent to me after the mural came down, and then when I tried to put it back up again, because people did say to me, but you're not really disabled. Do you have the right to do this mural? And it made me think about what is disability, and that disability is an identity, it's about community, and now I've lost my train of thought, but it's something to do with, it is true that I am not as impaired. I don't have the same impairments that I had 20 years ago or 10 years ago, but I still have the experience of disability, and I have, it is deeply embedded in me. I also, since I now actually have a lot of privilege in terms of being able to speak and having a voice, is that I sort of like have a moral obligation now to use my voice to explore these issues for people who can't, for people who are still struggling, for people who are locked up in institutions. Yeah, and in many ways too, this mural was made for my younger self. I wonder what it would have been like if I was in, 5 years post-brain injury and had seen this mural and had been able to access this amazing community of so much diversity and so much difference and so much amazingness. Yeah. I think I probably... Is there a time check? Because...
We've got 2 minutes left to the break.
Oh.
Of the break.
Oh, okay. All right then.
But we didn't advertise the break, so it doesn't matter.
You don't know about it. I just think, one more thing, and I won't go say long, but I just think disability pride is actually the reason why I have kept going with this and I have persisted, is that I actually really feel deeply that this is the way forward to make change in our society and to actually get society embracing disability, because at the moment they don't see us as, we're seen as this problem and something, and change is happening, but it's happening because people feel like they should include disabled people, or the rules say we should. But they're not saying, hey, look, there's all those disabled people. They're awesome. We want them to come to our event. And they should be, because we are awesome. But they don't know we're awesome because we're not yet standing up and saying what we're doing.
Who said that?
We're awesome.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, so we're just talking now about Stella Young. And Stella Young's impact on Australia's consciousness called, in no small way, for the population to investigate their behaviour in relation to those disabled by our society. As a loud proponent of the social model of disability, her speaking and writing work introduced this seismic attitudinal shift to Australian consciousness. By her assertion, the awareness of disability in Australia stepped up more than a few notches. When Stella unfortunately passed in 2015, Arts Access Victoria honoured both her involvement with the organisation itself and her outside work in the media and the arts, on stage and on screen. And they did this with an award in her name, recognising a disabled artist between the ages of 16 to 30 whose work reflects Stella's ethos. And we're going to be joined now on our screen by Madeleine Little. And as the inaugural winner of the Stella Young Award, in other words, she won last year, an actor and theatre maker based in Brisbane, she wears her disabled artist tag loudly and proudly. After participating in some very exciting things in the past year, other than the staging of one of her own pieces of work named Hold, she is here to let us know more.
Hello. There is a bit of a delay, so please bear with me if I stumble. We're working on it. Okay. So thank you, Eva, for introducing me. Where do I look? There. Okay. My name is Madeleine Little. I'll quickly describe my appearance too. I'm a young white woman. I'm in my early 20s. I have my long red hair pulled in a ponytail. I'm wearing a denim dress and a black cardigan and some very cool headphones. I could be a DJ. My sign name looks like this. It's long, sexy hair with an M. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which I live and work, the Turrbal and Yagara people. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So as Eva said, I am an actor and theatre maker based in Brisbane. I have been part of the Indelibility Arts Ensemble since it began in 2015, making work here in Brisbane. And I recently, as of yesterday, finished working at La Boite Theatre Company as ticketing and administration officer. So I qualify as an arts administrator as well as an artist. I hold a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Drama from QUT. I'm due to finish a Master of Arts this year. I'm researching accessible theatre practice, but I'll talk more about that in a second. I also work with the Last Avant-Garde research team at University of Melbourne with Kath Duncan. So last year, I had the incredible privilege of receiving the inaugural Stella Young Award from Arts Access Victoria. And when Eva called to tell me, I was completely shocked. I'm pretty sure I cried, and I'm pretty sure I was eating chicken nuggets at the time. It was a very strange phone call. So Eva, thank you for bearing with me then. But the call happened to come at a really difficult time for me creatively and professionally. But from that point onwards, I had some momentum. So I was successful in receiving an Arts Access Australia travel grant to attend Meeting Place, which is where I met Larissa. Hi, Larissa. Miss you. I was also asked to speak on the Leading to the Future panel. And it was that experience at Meeting Place where I became reacquainted with Kath Duncan. We talked a lot at the airport, and a couple of weeks later, she emailed me and asked me if I'd be interested in joining the research project team, which has been the most amazing experience. So since then, I've gone to Perth and Adelaide with the national workshops. I co-produced a week-long residency here in Brisbane as part of the Brisbane workshops as well. And it's just been the most amazing, fantastic experience delving into that research. And I never would have been able to do any of those things if it hadn't have been for the Stella Young Award. So I'm so eternally grateful. On a personal and professional practice level, I had the task of creating a production for my master's that tested some of the accessible theatre practice that I was researching. I created my show Hold, which is based on personal experience and uses personal poetry interspersed with scenes of 4 friends hanging out at the girls' night and catching up. It was really important to me to make a show that was disabled led, had a disabled character, but it wasn't about disability. It was actually about dating and boys and work and all that other stuff that 20-year-olds are kind of doing at the moment, those young whippersnappers. I wrote the first draft in August and September, produced the first season in November at the Festival of Australian Student Theatre. That was like a first work in development showing situation. And then I redeveloped the show and presented a second season just in April at the Roundhouse Theatre. So that was the most amazing experience. The second development of the show featured a 50% deaf and disabled cast and a coda on stage as an integrated character, so child of deaf adults, as an integrated character in the work, who also worked as a shadow interpreter. It was really important to me that these relationships on stage felt authentic, just as they would be in real life. We also attempted to provide open captioning of every single line of dialogue in the show, tech issues aside, and we presented the show in relaxed performance format every time. We tested integrated audio description for the first time, and we're still tweaking that. I've learned a lot from that experience as well. We had easy English summaries at the box office, comprehensive warnings about the content of the show. We gathered audience feedback, and I'm using all of that to analyze how well we integrated these accessible theatre practice conventions, because for me, it's not just about making sure that the art is accessible to one component of the deaf and disabled community. It's about making it as accessible as possible to as many people as possible, but also to myself and my other artists who actually make the work. So in short, the process of making the show was a key component of establishing my creative practice as I test what makes a show accessible, but also what makes a bloody good show. I wanted people to laugh, I wanted people to cry, and I wanted people to just feel all the feels. This show never would have been possible without the Stella Young Award. I want to emphasize that as much as possible. I put the $3,000 aside for the show, and I used it on artist fees and venue hire fees, which has made a world of difference. It made producing, writing, directing, and performing in a show possible, and it made testing the research possible. I'm trying to establish myself in an industry that does not cater for me and it does not welcome me in. So to do that, I'm trying to create a resource for professional theatre companies to increase deaf and disabled representation in professional main stage theatre. I'm so much closer to achieving that goal. Thanks to the Stella Young Award and to Arts Access Victoria and to Stella's example. So that is a brief rundown of what I've been doing this past year. And if you're wondering if I've slept, no, I haven't, but I'm working on that. And to wrap up, I do have a question for all of you to kickstart, if you do have a couple of questions for me also. My question to you, everyone in the audience, if you are at a place where you don't feel that disability pride yet, what do you need? What do you think you need to start your disability pride journey? Thank you.
Okay, Madeleine, now we're waiting for the audience to come forth with their response to that question. What do you need to feel disability pride?
I think you need acceptance for having a disability to start with. Or like mine was acquired, and it took me about 3 or 4 years to actually accept it. But yeah, and now I've got the pride, and I love the fact that I've got a disability, and I feel like I'm a better person because I've become a better person because before I wasn't a really good person. A lot of bad choices. Party boy.
Woohoo. Anybody else? What do you need to feel pride?
I've got a microphone.
Oh, great.
But
why don't you use it?
I thought I might answer.
Okay.
For me personally, I think it takes courage, and I work at Arts Access, and since I started working there, it feels emotional. Last September, I have been rubbing it up against my own experience that, it's that thing, am I, the question, I've never identified myself as having a disability, but I have an experience of mental health and chronic illness, but I've always been able to go to work, even though sometimes that's challenging. And so, and working in this field for a long time, but then not feeling like, I could still do everything, or if I couldn't, I just went home. You know what I mean? So it wasn't a thing where people necessarily knew what was going on. So, yeah, and that's a practice. I relate to it being a practice where you accept who you are and courageously speak. So I'm feeling that right now.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Larissa.
The question again was? I know what it
What?
was.
Yep.
What do you need to make yourself feel proud? I know for me, it's about having friends around me. And so sometimes I'm good at thinking if I'm going somewhere where it's going to be an unfriendly environment towards disability, I'll take someone with me because I do think I feel better, strength in numbers. I've also got another secret weapon, and that is that I spent last year making disability pride badges and giving them out to everybody.
I've got one.
And and wearing them. And obviously sometimes you walk into places where it isn't cool to wear it, or you're not quite proud enough to wear it on the outside, so I'll wear it on the inside. Underneath a jumper. And I've got like this sort of secret armour going on, so I am proud. I'm remembering I'm proud. I'm just not necessarily sharing it with everybody at that moment.
That's great. Come on. Yes.
I guess I'm looking at it from a different angle, from the grassroots, I guess. Seeing I'm a parent of 3 children with disability, but I'm also a school teacher and worked with kids on the autism spectrum disorder for over 10 years. I guess what I'm hearing from everyone is that you guys have taken a long time to develop your pride. How amazing would it be if we started when kids are young and make that part of the curriculum and part of their school life, so that they're not growing up and going through their mental health difficulties and all that sort of thing as they reach their teens. I'd like to see pride being taught or encouraged in little kids, so they get to this age or their adult life and not have as many difficulties and feel proud of who they are.
Great idea. Did you want to say something, Madeleine?
Yeah, I agree with that. Starting younger, the younger the better. Very, very briefly, my journey started in Perth, where I actually met Eva at the Jenny Seeley residency, and I arrived late and couldn't find a chair that worked for me. And I immediately went into apologising because I had to ask for a different chair. It was an instinct. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry for the trouble. I'm so sorry. And Gail Mellis just put her hand on my arm and said, no, that's your access. And in that moment, it just blew my tiny 21-year-old mind that I was allowed to take up space and I was allowed to ask for what I needed to exist in that space. So that's where my journey began there. And I guess that's my encouragement. If anyone in the room might be feeling a little bit uncomfortable or not quite there yet, you are allowed to take up space. You're allowed to ask for what you need to take up that space. And you do get proud by practicing. I'm still practicing. It's a daily thing, but it's amazing. As soon as you start that journey, it is like a weight off your shoulders and so many doors open to you. And I'm just so grateful for Stella and her legacy and for this beautiful, wonderful award that is going to a very worthy person this evening.
Thank you so much, Madeleine Little. The Stella Young Award panel met on Saturday just gone to comb through the many worthy applications for this year's award. Our panel, who all knew Stella personally, are Sarah Barton from Grit Media. She was Stella's friend and collaborator. Maddie Little, Stella's sister. Also, George Teleporis was part of the panel, and he is an academic and he was a close friend of Stella's. And CEO of Arts Access Victoria, Carolyn Bowditch. After much discussion, it was decided the winner would be someone Stella would have loved to have sit down with over a drink, more than likely, to discuss their similar ethos and viewpoints. With that in mind, here to present our 2019 winner is Carolyn Bowditch. Ta-da!
I get all the best jobs. It was a really amazing conversation that we had on Saturday. So we had 14 applicants from all over Australia. And there were some incredibly strong contenders. And as we read these applications, we just kept thinking, what would Stella do? How many of us in that room ask ourselves that? In this room, ask ourselves that every day. What would Stella do? Yeah, it's a constant question for me. So we kind of had that moment of saying, what would Stella do? Who would she want to spar, interact with? Who would she want to have those conversations, the juicy conversations with? And what it came down to was the winner was someone who we really felt is continuing Stella's legacy. They are a person who is absolutely interrogating the things that Stella started. They are continuing the conversation. They are continuing the challenging. They are doing all the stuff that Stella did. And I really feel like the winner picks up the mantle and is going to continue to run with it. So I'm very proud to announce the winner of the 2019 Stella Young Award is Vanessa Jo Di Natale. Congratulations. Can I squeeze you?
Thank you. Yeah, I'll come round. Thank you. Hello. I did write something, but I'll try and wing it for like a few minutes until I can't, and then I will get my phone out. Yeah, when I found out about this, I kind of went into shock. Everything I've read that Stella has written has made me go, oh shit. That's hitting the nail right on the head. That's really cutting through the bullshit. I really admire writers and artists who can do that, who can see past all the crap that gets smeared along things, and it really cuts through that and shows people, oh wait, that's actually really stuffed up. And that's like, I really respect and really admired her ability to do that in the things that she wrote and spoke about. And now I will refer to my phone. So I didn't realise that I was a part of the disability community until 2014. Most women on the autism spectrum slip under the radar because of just sexism in the diagnostic criteria. It's been thought of as exclusively male experience, and we're only starting to realise now that women, as well as non-binary and trans people, are also neurodivergent. So I kind of feel like I've just discovered a community that have welcomed me in with open arms. So that feels really, really great. Yeah, so in the last 4 years, I've come to really identify with being a disabled woman. For some people who have known me, they kind of were, they wanted me to be reluctant about using or hesitate about using the word disabled, because they thought if I came to over-identify with the term, that would make me focus overly on the challenges autistic people would have, and it would mean that I would alienate myself from communities that I perceived as able-bodied, able-minded spaces. And I don't think that's true at all. I think, embracing that identity has made me become more in tune with the fact that there are places that I'm not accepted, and to sort of, I think when we have that recognition of spaces where we're not accepted, we can sort of prepare and sort of protect ourselves much better. An idea of Stella's that I really, really liked, and you probably know, is her idea of disabled people as being sort of inspiration porn. And I took this idea and I applied it to how we speak about autistic people. And you've often probably, you mainly only ever hear about autistic people when they have a really great talent. They can draw a picture by memory in 3 minutes, or they can do coding in 3 minutes, or they can play piano the moment they sit down at it, and like we're just superhumans. But I'm here to tell you that I can't do any of those things. So that was when I heard Stella talk about that, that was the way I thought about it. Getting a Disability Arts Award feels strange, because I'm just very new to the arts world, and in the short time that I've been in it, I've kind of sat back and I've looked at how much nepotism there is, and I've thought, with my autism, I'm not going to get anywhere. But I think that's why organisations like Art Access Victoria, which sort of recognise that there are parts of the art world which are quite conservative, and that kind of see disability, accessibility, like only consider it really as an afterthought, like, oh, yes, some people need this. I didn't realise. So that's why organisations like this one are really important. I also have to admit that I did deal with a lot of feelings of imposter syndrome leading up to tonight. I'd asked myself questions like, have I done enough in disability arts and activism to deserve this? Because up until a point in my interactions with others, I do have passing privilege. I am white and I am educated. And these were all the sorts of thoughts that I had. And when I shared this with my mum, she told me the story about my brother who also has autism as well as an intellectual disability. And I think this story really highlights how some of the challenges of when your disability is invisible. She said, do you want to know how many times when your brother was younger, how many fines ticket inspectors gave me and how many people yelled at me and said, you're not disabled, he's not disabled, get out of that car parking spot. And I would have to contest fine after fine just because your brother looked like he wasn't disabled. So I study politics at Melbourne Uni. And in those classes, as you can imagine, I'm frequently spoken over. I'm often the only disabled person in the room. And sometimes in these classes, I give up altogether trying to communicate because these politics students, they really aren't listening to anyone other than themselves. And that's when I kind of realised these are probably going to be the people who get into politics. I try and keep sitting in these classes, although I realise that this is a taste of what's to come. And through being part of the disability arts community, it's kind of helped me better be able to exist in these spaces that I'm really not meant to be in, and in the hope that, you know, maybe by me being there, it will often, like politics tutors, it's their first ever encounter with someone with autism, and so hopefully that in itself is doing something. I think given this award, since people don't often take me seriously because I really struggle with my verbal communication, I think the symbolism of having this to my name will probably maybe make people start taking me a bit more seriously. Recently, I'm jumping everywhere, I'm sorry. Recently someone said to me, Vanessa, you are not your autism, that's just something you have, that's one part of you. And while this person had good intentions, I'm a bit tired of the rationale they had good intentions. Because this explains away and doesn't give us full permission to feel the hurt and powerlessness statements like this can often evoke in us. For anyone else who has a disability, who has had a similar statement uttered to them, you probably might feel similarly that disability isn't just some small facet of our identities which we can tune in and out of as we please. We often can't walk out the front door without anxieties about what obstacles, judgments, misconceptions we're going to have to just tolerate or decide that we're going to have to educate people that day, and just putting up with having to sort of choose between, do I just put up with this or do I educate you? That can be really exhausting. We are reminded, usually very rudely, that we don't meet the criteria of normal, healthy, able, competent throughout multiple spheres of our lives. For myself, as I kind of touched on, my difficulties with verbal communication have meant I've often been written off as an idiot, someone unworthy of giving a go. I find it harder to sell myself and ideas to others, to pique people's interest, to get others to come on board with my projects or see value in what I'm trying to say or do. But being here with you all tonight and receiving this really does make me feel quite valued. So thank you. Here are some cynical observations I've made about the art world. It's one of collecting friends in high places who are held in high esteem by organisations, and usually, if you want to be taken seriously, you need to pick the interests of someone who is a somebody. So you have to have connections, or if they've got a disability quota, play to the disability perspective card, which appeals to their need to include various perspectives in their organisation. I think I mentioned more about sort of the tokenistic sort of way politicians and organisations tend to go about diversity. It's more of a, I think we really risk it becoming a sort of patting themselves on the back. Let me find the line. So we're often add-ons ticking a diversity quota box so they can pat themselves on the back and say, oh, look at us, we included a disabled person. We've dismantled centuries of othering, marginalising, experimenting on, neglecting and killing disabled people by hiring this one disabled person. I think we've earned ourselves a lunch break. I also was thinking about the sort of disabled people who don't access art and who don't recognise that their experiences are experiences that could be that people would want to hear about. And this is where I say that it's the disability movement primarily benefits white, middle-class, disabled people, people like myself. And if we think about just recently with Indigenous Australians with psychosocial disabilities in watch houses and the children with disabilities abused in police detention, or the citizenship claims that have been rejected because a child in the family had a disability and was considered an economic burden. These are the sort of disabled people that they're not going to get that access to art and find that pride. I think about that a lot. Yes, yeah. So I am very grateful for this award, and while I endeavour to seek out and be conscious of the intersectional nature of disability, I recognise that there are things that I cannot say because there is discrimination and mistreatment I have not experienced. I really hope that disabled people will expect more and more when it comes to how and who is representing us in the arts and politics. And to touch more on the theme of art and pride, I didn't start writing about being autistic with the aim of being an advocate or improving attitudes held about neurodivergent people. I started writing about being autistic because I had internalized so many narratives about how we are socially defective, incapable of empathy, robotic and undesirable, that I had to get all those stories down on paper. And once I was able to hold them up and look at them and realise I don't need any of these. And then from there, that's when I started to look into the disability movement. And the last thing I will say is I really hope I've managed to say things here tonight that go beyond empty virtue signalling, and wanted to point out that I really appreciate this opportunity, and there's still a lot that still needs to be addressed about how we treat and think about disabled people in Australia and abroad. And yeah, thanks for listening to me, and feel free to approach me after this. And I was supposed to end on a question. My question had to do with how do you feel proud of yourself and your art when others outside your community aren't?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Vanessa. I just wanted to say that Madeleine Little, she wanted to say, she's extending her congratulations to you too, even though she's watching from the ether. There you go, Madeleine. There she is. Do you want to say it in person, Madeleine?
Sure. Congratulations so much. This opportunity has been life-changing for me, and I know it will be for you too. And you were right, just having it on your name makes a world of difference. Congratulations. Make the most of it, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Yay. Does anybody want to answer Vanessa's question? Do you want to say it again, just one more time?
When people outside your community aren't proud or interested in your art, how do you sort of reconcile that with being proud of your art and disability? Yeah.
I've been thinking about, while these questions have been asked throughout the night, what sort of carries me through and allows me to believe in myself and what I do. And I think it's a sense of human rights and social justice that I've had since before I got my disability. That sort of always stayed with me. And a sense of what right have you got to say my rights are any less than yours. And there's a sort of a general, pardon my language, fuck you sort of thing that I've always felt when people launch those attitudes at me. I guess that makes me feel even more determined to keep going. And as far as with my art, I've had a lot of doubts, and because not only because I've got a disability, but because the kind of performance work I do is pretty fringy and always has been. I have had to think, well, this isn't acceptable to certain people in the art world, but it's what I do, and along the way I've had to come to the conclusion that it's what I do and I'm going to keep doing it, even if both inside and outside the disability world it's not, sort of lauded in the way some other art is. So I guess it's the art itself and really believing in it.
And the eternal middle finger.
Exactly.
And that was completely unintentional. All right, I'd like to wrap up tonight, please. It is 9:30 and this is the time that we were meant to finish. So I would like to thank the Arts Centre Melbourne, of course, Arts Access Victoria, together with the Artist Engagement Team, of which I am part, Description Victoria, who was doing the audio description of tonight, and Auslan Stage Left, who are to my stage left. And I'd like to just inform everybody that there is a monthly networking meeting held at Arts Access. Please get in touch with the artist engagement team and come along. Mix with your peers. Let's get together. Nothing about us without us. Let's do it. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Thank you.